My story starts long before hospitals, before medical breakthroughs, before I ever heard words like gene therapy. It starts in middle school, a time when most kids are worried about grades or crushes or who's sitting where at lunch. For me, those years were different. I was already living with the disease that caused unpredictable, excruciating pain, sickle cell disease. And while my body was hurting, my mind was quietly breaking down too. I remember sitting in classrooms trying to focus while silently counting down the minutes until my next pain crisis. I remember friends drifting away because I was always out sick. I remember teachers not understanding why I missed so many days. And little by little, I started to feel invisible. It's hard to explain what that does to a young mind. When you start believing that your existence is too complicated for people to care about, depression doesn't always start as sadness. Sometimes it starts as exhaustion, as a quiet voice that says, why even try? By high school, that voice got louder. I didn't have the words for what I was feeling back then. I just knew I wanted the pain to stop. And I'll be real with you tonight. I didn't just think about ending my life. I tried. That decision, that cry for peace, led me to my first stay in the psychiatric ward. I was barely out of high school, just a young adult, trying to figure out how to keep going when everything inside of me wanted to quit. But that experience planted something in me. Not hope, not yet, but awareness. Awareness that what I was battling wasn't weakness, it was illness. Even with all that, I still had moments that I was deeply proud of. Somehow, even with the pain and fatigue, I played tackle football. That might sound ordinary to some, but for me, it was defiance, proof that sickle cell wouldn't box me in. And then came one of the biggest surprises of my life, being crowned homecoming king. That night, smiling for pictures, surrounded by friends, I looked like a young man who had it all together. But the truth is, I was still living day to day, quietly, uncertain if I'd even live long enough to have a future. Every good thing felt temporary, like I was celebrating on borrowed time. That uncertainty caused not just emotional stress, but spiritual stress. It made me question God, purpose, and even while I was still here. I didn't plan to be here long enough to tell this story, but somehow I am. As I got older, I tried to outrun the pain, both physical and emotional. I threw myself into distractions, convinced I could outwork the darkness. But sickle cell doesn't let you forget it's there. The pain, the fatigue, the endless hospital stays. They remind you that your body and mind demand attention. When you live with that constant pressure, your brain learns to expect pain, even in peace. It's like waiting for the next storm when the sky is clear. Depression became my shadow. It followed me everywhere, into my relationships, into my work, even into moments that should have felt joyful. Eventually, that darkness grew heavy enough that I found myself right back where I thought I'd never return. Another hospital, another psychiatric ward. I was older by then, somewhere in my 20s. And what hurt the most was not being there again. It was realizing how much of my life had been spent fighting just to stay here. But somehow, along that road, a new door opened. I was presented with an opportunity to take part in a medical trial, something experimental that offered a chance to change the course of my disease. It wasn't an easy decision. It took every ounce of my faith, patience, and mental strength I had left. Because when you spend your whole life managing pain, the idea of hope can feel dangerous. That treatment became a part of my sickle cell journey. A chapter filled with test, fear, resilience, and renewal. It changed things physically, yes, but mentally, that's where the hardest work remained. Because when you live your whole life in survival mode, you don't just flip a switch and feel better. You have to relearn how to live without expecting pain around every corner. You have to teach your mind that safety doesn't mean weakness, that peace doesn't mean the fight is still over. Even after the medical milestone, I still face mental struggles. Healing the body is one thing. Healing the mind is another battle entirely. Living with sickle cell or any chronic illness isn't just about physical endurance. It's about emotional stamina. Every day is a negotiation between pain and possibility. You tell yourself, I'll push through, even when your spirit is running on fumes. And that's why mental health is so critical. Because if the mind goes unchecked, no amount of medicine can keep you alive on the inside. There were years where I hid my struggles out of shame, but looking back, I realized those were the years that nearly cost me my life. Because silence is deadly. And I want to just repeat that, because silence really is deadly. When people say check on your strong friends, it's not just a saying, it's a lifeline. I faced pain that medicine couldn't numb, and darkness that light couldn't reach, but I'm still here. And if you take nothing else from my story tonight, take this. You're not weak for needing help. You're not broken for wanting peace. You're a human. Healing isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new one. Thank you.